really quickly and talk about good kinds of identity politics and bad kind of identity politics from Destiny's Pastebin Notes. I want to use this as an opportunity to just like kind of go through each individual candidate and talk about the good kind of identity politics and the bad kind of identity politics. Because I think that almost all politics is, especially in America, almost all politics revolves around identity, especially when it comes to like the Republican Party. They do identity politics all the time. They're just doing it for straight white men for the most part. And we are conditioned to assume that when identity politics is being done about straight white men, it's actually just the default and it's not identity politics at all. I'm not reading anything yet. I'm just talking about this. So I am a massive advocate for intersectionality, and I think that class consciousness should be at the heart of that intersectional movement. And as a matter of fact, I think that identity building should be should work towards building a class consciousness. It's a good entry point into politics. People that come from marginalized backgrounds will be more inclined to and will be more motivated to get together and fight back. But I think that we should use every opportunity of identity consciousness and intersectionality to also instill class consciousness in every American. And also, obviously, you have to do that for white people anyway. So, good kinds of identity politics. Right off the top of my head, I'm going to go to it. Cory Booker. Cory Booker made a statement about... Where is Cory Booker? Cory Booker made a statement about LGBT protections that were an absolute necessity.
We do not talk enough about trans Americans, especially African-American trans Americans, and the incredibly high rates of murder right now. We don't talk enough about how many children, about 30% of LGBTQ kids, who do not go to school because of fear.
I fully agree. I think he did a great job. That is a good kind of identity politics where you almost completely understand the problem, or at least one element of a significant problem, which is trans people being under attack, basically. And I really like that. I thought that was a good. I thought that was a good point. I don't know why. Okay, well, I guess Destiny. Oh yeah, African Americans. He literally took a point, African Americans, and then added trans Americans in the African American.
I'm sorry.
African American community, which was really good. So that is the good kind of identity politics. As a matter of fact, let me tell you exactly what the bad kind of identity politics is: the shallow pandering. When Julian Castro came out and said, we need to be talking about abortion, and what about abortion for trans men? And I'm sorry, he didn't even say trans men. He said trans women. Sorry, and trans women can't get pregnant. Trans men can. And I think he tried to that's what he was trying to say, but he messed it up. And that is kind of indicative of like someone who truly hasn't understood the concept and just like kind of did that to be like, yeah, he said trans females. And that was like a total pandering. It's very obvious, and I think a lot of people can understand where that comes from. And you know what? I think it ultimately does a disservice. Like even if he just slipped up, ultimately it does a disservice to the issues impacting the trans community because like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like abortion for trans men is just literally just shallow representation in that instance. It's not one of the top issues impacting the trans men at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of trans men, and people are going to shit on me anyway because this is a very touchy subject, but a lot of trans men can't give birth, especially after they go through rigorous gender confirmation surgery. So yeah, so it's not like that is not the most severe and the most impactful, the most important thing you should be addressing. You should be addressing in regards to addressing the trans community. It just seems like you just wanted to bring that up to showcase how woke you are. So that's like a great example of, I think that's a great example of Cory Booker, who brought up black trans women getting murdered, which is a huge problem. Unlike any other marginalized community, they're at the intersection of misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, like they literally, and racism. They literally get it from all ends. So that was a good point for Cory Booker. That is actually good identity politics. Another example of bad identity politics is when Beto came out swinging with his broken Spanish.
Necesitamos incluir cada persona en el éxito de esta economía. Pero si queremos hacer eso, necesitamos incluir cada persona en nuestra democracia. Cada votante necesitamos.
I think that is, again, a shallow way of trying to say, hey, I care about this. Look at me. Look at how much I care about the Hispanic community. Wait, I think people are misunderstanding my point. It may be pandering, but I think attention towards black trans women getting murdered is ultimately good. Yes, 100%. That's why I said Cody. That's why I said Cory Booker bringing up trans issues was good identity politics. It was an actually impactful problem. It wasn't just like a throwaway, hey, I said trans rights, by the way, moment. It was truly an important moment where he brought up a significant issue impacting the trans community and then followed it up by all the problems that the LGBT community faces. That was literally my point. My point is that Cory Booker did a good job doing identity politics, and in that instance, Castro did a bad job doing identity politics. So anyway, another bad example of identity politics was Beto O'Rourke not really addressing the question, but doing it in a Spanish way. I mean, doing it in Spanish. I thought that was really cringy. There were a lot of people who are native Spanish speakers who also agree with me on this. I'm sure that there are some people who think that, I'm sure that there are certain people who don't agree with me. Someone in the chat said pandering sounds like the right saying virtue signaling. Yeah, of course. Everyone virtue signals. Politicians pander all the time. That's like a big part of what they do, guys. So I'm using the term correctly here. You can call it virtue signaling if you want. You can call it pandering if you want. But that's a big part of what. That's a big part of what fucking politicians do. So Beto does actually have good takes on immigration. So I don't know why he like felt the need to do that. So I don't know. I thought it was really cringy, especially because like Cory Booker was going to do that too. That was really cringy as well. Pander might have a negative connotation. Yes, it should have a negative connotation. I'm using it in a negative way. Not all identity politics is created equal. Perhaps the best example of this is the famous, I think, who came up with that? I don't remember who was the one who wrote this tweet, but the famous neoliberalism can be summarized with more female prison guards. So that is the perfect representation of shallow liberalism encapsulated in less than 140 characters. Pandering is not a positive thing, but that, more female prison guards, is absolutely a pandering statement. You are not trying to identify the actual problem of why prisons exist to begin with and seeking to eliminate that, and instead saying, oh, as long as we have female drone pilots or as long as we have female representation in the prison guard community, then that's fine. That actually helps mitigate the actual problem, when it doesn't. It actually points the focus in a totally unrelated thing that is not even an issue to begin with when it comes to reforming our criminal justice system. Castro did a decent job when he was talking about immigration, but it goes completely against his previous. Like, I want to say that Castro's statements about the Latinx immigration plan and whatnot was good, but it's probably fake. And the reason why I say this is because back in 2013, when he was working as I think he was the housing secretary under Barack Obama, his opinion on immigration was that, I mean, he used his Hispanic identity to straight up advocate for some of the more brutal parts of the Obama administration, some of the more criticized elements of the Obama administration, which was, of course, his draconian rule over immigration policy, which is interesting because he then turns around now and acts like he has a complete 180 turn. Here it is. Let's watch what he had to say.
Should play a role to discourage future immigration by those not documented by making jobs to them unavailable. Should that be a part of that comprehensive immigration reform?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do believe that that enforcement, both in terms of active enforcement at our borders and under this administration, there's been tremendous progress with regard to enforcement. In fact, the triggers in the 2007 proposal have just about all been met. But going forward, of course, enforcement is part of the conversation. In Texas, we know firsthand that this administration has put more boots on the ground along the border than at any other time in our history, which has led to unprecedented success in removing dangerous individuals.
Yeah, and then considering Obama's like immediate removal policy with boots on the ground at the border, a tremendous success is a rather militant perspective. And for those who are saying, well, what if his perspective changed over the course of the past 6 years? Well, I have a bridge to sell you if that's literally your perspective. Castro is a political animal. He is absolutely an opportunist. And it's not like he was 16 years old saying the N-word in a private chat. This is literally his job. His job is to conform to whatever is like politically viable at the time. So when I see guys like Castro, or when I see people like Hillary Clinton act like they care about, I don't know, overturning Citizens United, for example, I actually love that, because that means they have way better means testing protocols than I do. So when I hear someone like Hillary Clinton talk about Citizens United as she did in the aftermath of 2016, or when I hear someone like Castro have this perspective, but then turn around and act like he's a pro-immigrant darling 6 years later, it shows me the impact that Bernie Sanders has had. Okay? Bernie Sanders, and also all of the progressive activism that has taken place, has been really successful. It has been absolutely successful, that so much so that, you know, people like Castro are making complete turns.